Chapter 12. Return to Europe and Reflections on Migration and Peace. After Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, I returned to Europe, and there were reasons for it. But what did I learn from these travels? Believe me, a lot. First, people are the same everywhere, and so are their problems. In what sense are they the same? In the sense that they all experience the same emotions, frustrations, resentments, worries, and feelings, regardless of their skin color. Of course, Latin Americans are generally more passionate and temperamental than the Dutch or Germans. They are closed, very energetic in conflicts, they declare their love for each other 100 times a day, their countries are more seriously criminalized, and they also love to dance and sing. They also have a sense of their own exclusivity in comparison to others, a sense of being chosen, and they are clearly closed off from foreigners and attached to their families, following their own national and cultural code. It doesn't matter if they are Argentines, Chileans, or Venezuelans. Yes, they have corruption, drug trafficking, kidnapping, and street crime, while Europe is more law-abiding, financially literate, and has stricter laws and more restrained behavior. However, South America has never experienced such devastating wars as Europe. They don't shoot at each other with phosphorus missiles or drop bombs on civilians, as is the norm in recent years in a Christian society that supposedly values loving one's enemies. The Brazilians don't have heavy weapons capable of destroying entire cities, razing them to the ground, there are no refugee camps, and there is no persecution based on nationality or language, no self-aggrandizement or humiliation of other nations and cultures, and no extermination. People in Brazil live on the ocean and in the jungles, among the waterfalls and in the favelas, and they live a leisurely life. They are also very international. A mass of nationalities in the country are intertwined together and get along quite amicably, not killing each other in such quantities as in big Russia or native Ukraine. Traveling around Latin America, I saw its unforgettable beauty, communicated with the locals, and learned about its colorful culture. And each country was impressive and surprising in its own way. Through travel, one realizes that there is a place for everyone on this planet, and that every type of soul has a home where it can express itself as it pleases. Jungles, mountains, forests, seas, rivers, lakes, fields, oceans, deserts, cities, villages, and so on. In some places, such as Brazil, the humidity is unbearable, it is impossible to breathe, and the heat is stifling. In others, on the contrary, there are always clouds in the sky and endless rain, as in the Belgian climate. In others, there is sun and warmth all the time, as in Chile, and in Ukraine, there are 4 full seasons of the year. And people live absolutely everywhere, everywhere. In Brazil, in the Amazon jungle, native tribes still live who speak the languages that were there before the arrival of the Portuguese, despite the fact that there are many industrial cities in the country, such as São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, or Belo Horizonte. When I saw these Indians, they reminded me of Don Juan from Castaneda's book. Beautiful people, both men and women. In Santiago and in São Paulo I was lucky to see a lot of beautiful street markets. Mostly these markets are one day, they appear on some streets on certain days, and then disappear closer to the evening. You can buy everything your soul desires in such markets. In the Netherlands, there is simply no such format of shopping areas, there the whole country is like a toy, as if from a picture. There is hardly a single place that hasn't been touched by humans, and a typical Ukrainian ravine with a lake, or river, and reeds is considered a nature reserve in Belgium, and the forests there are fenced off, while in Ukraine's forests are completely pristine, and no one has fenced them off. Even in small EU countries such as Belgium and the Netherlands, despite claims of overpopulation, there are many empty fields. That's all nonsense. For example, when you're flying in a plane over Brazil or Argentina, you realize how ridiculous the idea of overpopulation is, because there are endless expanses beyond the window, where nothing has been built and no one lives in massive concentrations. And so it goes on and on. People are kept for fools and told myths about the hostility of other nations or overpopulation, while Russia, with its endless land resources, for some reason always builds high-rise buildings and sells apartments in them at fabulous prices, and a lot of land is left unclaimed and unused. Its borders are surrounded by barbed wire while she tells her people stories about the treacherous. The West, which is supposedly dreaming of conquering mighty Russia, while her own people live in fear, poverty, and obedience. And they instill xenophobia and hatred of other peoples and people, and because of their own poor living standards and poverty, Russians attack everyone they can, taking land from the people around them like racketeers. It's all about deception and exploitation. The whole world is a big prison for people. Our bodies are prisons, our countries are prisons, and the world is a prison. Prisons are different, attractive or terrible, far or close, simple or complex, but they are still prisons. The most terrible prisons are our bodies, which are subject to aging, illness, and endless needs. The soul is imprisoned by the body, and without it, the body is dead. Everything here is dead, unconscious, and consciousness is the soul. Everything is permeated with the soul around us, because everything lives thanks to consciousness. And if it disappears, the whole world will be instantly dead. But sometimes unusual souls appear, as if from demonic worlds, and sometimes, on the contrary, from the worlds of gods. How else can one explain such dualistic devotion to different life inclinations by essentially the same people? That's the only way. This planet seems to have been created for equal conditions for both, where good competes with evil, where there are only two camps, fear and love, each of which has its own power. And sometimes it seems that the world is held together by, there is no other way than through violence and love. The stronger one is right, it has always been like that. And it will always be like that, the rules of the game on this planet are like that. As a migrant, I can tell you this for sure. Being as dependent as possible on the system, I am completely at its mercy and I have to constantly do many of the things that the government of the Netherlands, Brazil or Chile orders me to do, because I have no rights. In Ukraine, I would have been captured by representatives of the Territorial Recruitment Center and sent to the front or maimed if I refused to obey. In Russia, I would also have been taken to the military enlistment office and sent to the army to liberate people from their usual lives. And nowhere will a person have a free life. There is no freedom. Everywhere he is hunted like a rat, everywhere he is denied his own life. He does not belong to himself. He depends on many circumstances and other people's whims. Isn't that slavery? Yes, this is slavery. Whether we travel or lead a sedentary lifestyle, we are still slaves to the system. And the system, in turn, is an instrument of certain forces behind this visible world. These forces are absolutely real. I do not know what these forces are, but I firmly believe that they exist and that they control everything here.